Hi everyone, Jay here from Jade Productions, back with another video. This time, very special, got T with us here. Say hi.
Hey.
And we're going to be talking about the brand new Daughters of Khaine book, just up for pre-order this weekend. Well, got some information on it, got a whole bunch of information on it, courtesy of many places, and we're going to be going through it and giving a bit of a quick dissection on our immediate thoughts and what we think of it, the changes that have been made, as well as how we think this is going to affect the faction and in terms of their play style and the tactics that previously one would use.
Well, yeah.
So, T, you're the Daughters of Khaine player of the two of us. I've had limited experience with them, so I guess we'll start
Yep.
with the War Scrolls though, as the most important thing, because these things, they haven't been made freely available yet, and the ones up on the Games Workshop store are still they are still the old ones.
Yeah.
So, take us away. We'll start with Marathi and the Shadow Queen, I guess.
So, Games Workshop promised us that Marathi and the Shadow Queen weren't going to change, but there is one change that has been made to the Shadow Queen, which I'm not sure if it's just an error on their part. But the Shadow Queen's heart render has had its rend reduced by 1, so now it's only rend -1 instead of rend -2.
Is that a change they've made from the Marathi Broken Realms book?
Yes, correct.
Oh, I missed that I missed that completely. Oh my.
Yeah, I dissected this whole thing. There's a lot of little changes like that I picked out.
Oh geez. So they've reduced her rend on heart render. It's still what is it? 8 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1, 3 damage.
Yeah, so I suppose losing 1 rend isn't a huge deal, but considering the Shadow Queen is supposed to be the big thing killer, it's the one thing you want to send after the opponent's big, heavily armored, big save creatures.
Yeah, that
Probably will
actually
make a
quite
huge difference.
hurts a little bit, because that rend -1, like the 3-up and 4-up saves of some of the more durable things you want to throw her at, as like a ballistic missile, are now going to 4-up and 5-up saves, which are not great saves, but not terrible.
Or, yeah, in Sigmar, they're actually considered a pretty average save. Like,
Yeah,
if you're
so
getting 4 up on something, you consider yourself lucky usually.
pretty much, and increasing. There's been a lot of really durable factions coming out recently.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this is just a typo from when they've copied it, but if it's deliberate change, I guess we'll know when the FAQ comes out.
Yeah, that's a little yeah. Okay.
Seems odd because they specifically said that she was not going to change from the Marathi book.
I guess that's a little niggle. It's interesting to me that that is something that they have actually changed her. That it means it's even more worthless for those of us who were thinking about buying the next book tech list for Lumineth, because hell, the War Scrolls might all just change.
Yeah, it's a bit.
I'm really disliking this current business model they've got, and the Lumineth are the apex, in my opinion, of just complete bullshit way to release an army. But moving on, is there any other things to do with the Shadow Queen? And
There's
how she's
nothing else
really
to note
changed?
about Marathi Kensho Queen. I've read over it. It's identical line for line, other than that Ren change. She's still 600 points. So
Would you
move on.
still use her the same way? I mean, I know before it was you use wizard version in the early game and then switch to monster when. Well, actually, she has both now. So I guess
Yes,
we
you can
can't
do
even
both
use it
now.
that way anyway. Because before it
Um,
was you'd use her to buff, and then you'd switch and use her as a ballistic missile and as a
yeah,
blocking unit.
and now you can do both at once, which is pretty damn useful.
True, you no longer have to make that decision.
Yeah. So yeah, if you've already used the new Marathi Kane and Shadow Queen, you pretty much use it the same way you used to. You just might have to be a bit more particular about your targets if that render doesn't change. You're gonna have to go after some of the lighter armored big things with her.
Yeah, anything that doesn't have a 3-up save, I'd probably consider as the ideal target. I don't
Yeah,
know if they have a way anymore with their spells to reduce anyone's armor saves or give any extra rend.
they do, but we'll get to that.
Okay. So you're not completely out of options. You can still use her as the ballistic missile. So
Yes, it just means you'd have to buff her to get to her previous state, which is a bit annoying.
a bit annoying, but that's a bit of a balance thing. I mean, after all, that's the way it goes a lot of the time with this, with new faction releases when they redo a book.
Yeah. Alright, so moving on to the Slaughter Queen now. This one has had a couple of changes. One thing a lot of people on the forums haven't picked up on is that her bravery actually went down 1 point to 8, where it used to be 9.
Okay. So they've gone down in their bravery across the board, or just her?
Just her.
Odd.
Just her. The iron scale is still 9.
What about... okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So in terms of how she works, she looks like she's still... I'm looking at the one on Cauldron of Blood.
I'm looking at the Slaughter Queen here. The one on Cauldron, we'll get to the Cauldron in a moment. But obviously...
Yeah, the Slaughter
when
Queen.
you put her on a Cauldron, or you put a Hag Queen on Cauldron, it's the same upgrade.
Yeah, it's still the essential centerpiece of your army that you need to protect until you're ready to throw them in and really commit.
Yeah. So the only other changes she has is a rewording of the Orgy of Slaughter command ability. So now she can use it once in her hero phase instead of unlimitedly like she used to. But now she doesn't have the caveat of having to be the general to use it either.
That's a little better. I assume Marathi no longer has to be the general to use her command ability, which is pretty good.
Correct.
So that overall means there's more point to bringing both Marathi and something else, and now you're not punished for not making Marathi the general, which is, I think, overall a positive, healthy change, because you have it there. The command abilities are quite important. And
obviously that change has been around since the Marathi book.
Yeah.
The other important change to that command ability is it's now a wholly within 12 inch, and you'll find as we go through these, a lot of abilities have changed to be wholly within something.
That was to be expected, though, as a result of it being a first thing.
Yeah, wholly within 12 is a shortish kind of range, but it should be large enough for it to affect squads if you can get the Slaughter Queen up in the action instead of holding her back as a buff character.
Like most things, it'll be better on the Cauldron for that bigger base, therefore the bigger range.
Yeah, absolutely. Although the Slaughter Queen's speed might make her able to catch up with your faster units if you want her escorting your battle lines, for example.
Yeah, she pairs well with just about, well, you only really have 2 battle lines.
Yeah, well actually we've got 4 potential now.
Yeah. Well, you always had some, but most competitive players were at their salt previously. Before this book, the typical win strategy was Witch Elves plus Witch Brew.
Yes, and we'll get to Witch Brew in a second. The other interesting thing to note in the Slaughter Queen and in the Hag Queen is that the Touch of Death Prayer has not changed. It's still that goofy old guess which coin is in the hand ability. I really thought they were going to change that to just a dice roll or something. But
really?
It's still that weird, get your opponent to guess which coin is in which hand.
Yeah, take a dice and hide in one of your hands. Your opponent must pick one of your hands. If they pick the one holding the dice, the enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds.
Yeah,
it's a
bit odd that they left that in there. Thought they would have updated that to be a more streamlined rule.
It's okay, I'm just going to grow my beard so that for the dwarves I have perpetual advantage over you. If we're... Yeah. Okay, I can't say I'm a fan of that, but it doesn't really change how it was performing.
It hasn't changed. I'm just not a fan that they didn't change that ability to just be a bit easier. Like, it's essentially a 50-50 chance, guess the hand, so why not just make it a dice roll on a 4+ you get it, you know what I mean?
Unless you have more than 2 hands, in which case...
You've got an advantage, yeah. No disadvantage because they've got to pick the hand with the dice in it.
Hey, it's great if you're a one-armed player, but I still don't understand
it. Yeah, one-armed players will get it every time, won't they?
Yeah, I thought Age of Sigmar had grown out of a bit of that, but apparently it's still there. So what is next? Because
the Hag Queen is next.
The Hag Queen, the good old Hag Queen.
Yep, so the Hag Queen has suffered one of the worst nerfs, I think. But it's not all doom and gloom for the Hag Queen. For example, something a lot of people on the forums overlooked is that the Blade of Khaine, the basic little knife thing that she has, now wounds on a 3 up instead of a 4 up.
Yeah, I was gonna say she's got a nice attack profile. I do not remember it being that good.
No,
4
it used to
attacks with
be-
3 and 3 minus 1 damage. It's not terrible.
Yeah, it used to be 3 and 4, so now it's 3 and 3, which is a little bit better for her. I still don't really expect her to do much.
No, you probably shouldn't be putting her into combat. She should be there to witch brew things.
Yeah. But the biggest change is the witch brew change.
Yeah. Now I read this and I failed to process it the first several times. So maybe you can walk me through it.
Yeah. So it's changed. So now it affects a unit that is wholly within 12 inches of her. So it's going to be a lot harder to have her affect a unit unless she starts next to them. And then for it to go off, you have to roll a dice.
I do like that. It takes a bit of the guarantee out of it. It means Witch Brew was a little oppressive before.
Yes, it was a staple, which is why it's an auto include. I can understand why they've done it, but it is a huge nerf.
Is it?
So
yeah.
Now they get it off on a 5+ by default in round 1.
That's the part that I feel is going to hurt Daughters of Khaine.
Yes, because really after round 1, it's going to be hard to meet the first condition of being wholly within, because usually your whole army runs away from your buffing character.
Yeah, it's very much an Alpha Strike army of, here's my army, here's your army. If you don't deploy at the back of your deployment zone, I'm going to be up in your face really quick. They're really known for doing their first turn charges really easily.
So it does get better as you progress in the game, but of course
at that point you have diminishing returns because the squads you're going to be buffing are going to be losing guys immediately.
Yeah, they're going to be more dead, or the hag herself might be more dead.
I can tell you I'll be sniping her straight with my Caradrons, although maybe not anymore.
Yeah, well, it's not really worth it. So it's become quite unreliable, you know.
Yeah.
If you want to get it off in turn 1, you need to bring 3 Hag Queens to guarantee that 5 up.
Yeah, with that 33% chance on a 5 up. Now I'm looking at you add 1 to the roll for each of the following abilities that this model has gained.
Yes, so
Headlong Fury, Zealot's Rage, and Slaughterer's Strength.
Yes, so those are just the rules that they get from their allegiance ability. So all that's saying is in turn 2 you'll get +1, in turn 3 you'll get +2, in turn 4 you'll get +3.
So Headlong Fury starts in battle round 2?
2, yes. So battle round 2,
okay.
3, and 4. So if you somehow manage to get her to live till battle round 4, you get the ability off on a 4+. Yay.
I'll be honest, I think it should have been the reverse, where it got worse to cast over time, but I guess that's the whole point of the Daughters of Khaine. They get better over time, which is I probably think this is probably the strongest nerf overall. Have they changed? What does this effect even do now? I'm trying to read it here.
The effect is still exactly the same. It's still reroll failed wound rolls and immune to battle.
Okay, so overall, my immediate thought is it's not too oppressive.
Actually, by the way, it's worded here because it says on a 5+, you can get the reroll wounds. In addition, on a 5+, the battle shock tests. You ignore the battle shock test.
Yeah, you do not take the battle shock test for that unit until your next hero phase.
Yeah. It's a weird way to word it. I think that's just saying the same thing twice. You need a 5+ for both abilities, but you're only rolling 1 die still, so...
Yeah. It's a weird way of wording it, but...
It's a very weird way of wording it.
Because that's a little bit what threw me off when I immediately looked down at it.
Yeah.
So with this, though, I'm seriously doubt you're going to have to put more points into bringing heroes, and I guess the number one thing I advertised in the tactics videos, because you always do it, I even know to do it, everyone does it. Hag Queen. Hag Queen, yes. Witch Brew, first round, up you go, do your thing, kill everything.
Fortunately, though, the Hag Queen has been lowered in cost quite drastically.
how drastically are we talking? I think before it was like, I want to say...
Just let me find it here. Queen. So she was 100. She's down 10 points to 90 now.
That's not...
It's not a huge reduction, but it is a reduction.
That's not going to get you an extra Hag Queen, which you need at this point.
No, but there are a lot of reductions across the board that we'll get to that should easily equal that.
Okay.
Especially once we get to the reductions on the Cauldron of Blood versions.
Okay, yeah, because those were really expensive before, but absolutely mandatory.
Yeah. So the Cauldron of Bloods themselves, what they add to the Hag Queen and Slaughter Queen, hasn't changed much. The only thing that's changed is the Idol of Worship ability for the avatar on top. It's just changed to Holy within 12 inches. That's the only change to it. Otherwise, they add exactly the same thing they used to. You get your increase in wounds, you get your extra weapon profiles, you get the Avatar of Khaine strapped on top. None of its stats have changed.
Yeah, it's still an essential support piece and much needed beat stick later in the game.
The point reductions, however, are incredible. So the Hag Queen on Cauldron has gone down 70 points.
It kind of needed to. I mean, it's not at the point... It wasn't at the point level where it really deserved that.
No.
Like, with its stats. It's nice, it's impressive, but it's currently 13 wounds with a 5-up save. Like, as a monster centerpiece equivalent, it's actually pretty bad.
Technically, it will be a 4-up save, because its Blood Shield, even at its lowest range, will still affect itself.
Yeah, though, I do see the argument there of, I would love it if it was a bit of a 40k there and it didn't affect the target thing, but, like, the thing giving the aura, but, you know, can't have it all.
Yeah. And the Slaughter Queen hasn't gone down as much, she's gone down 20 points to 270.
Yeah. So
still nice discounts on both of those in there.
I no longer think the Hag Queen is the obvious choice of immediate hero to throw in. It's no longer the auto take.
It's definitely not an auto take anymore. Of course, without Witch Brew, there are battle shock issues to be addressed, especially if you're planning on still running giant hordes of witches or slaughters.
Yes, but there is command points, and I did spot a way in here you can generate extra command points as part of a command trait. Take that, 4-up. You probably some of the other ones. Bring some of the nice battalions that I spotted. You probably should be swimming in command points with a good build. So battle shock probably not such a concern.
And there are a few other tricks. It's not as easy as Witch Brew, you're done. It's just you now have to work for it if you want that battle shock immunity.
You have to actually play the game instead of autopilot.
Yeah. Moving on.
Welcome to Seraphon World.
Moving on, we've got the Iron Scale. It hasn't received any changes except for its points reduction. It's gone down 30 points to 110. I foresee the Iron Scale being the new go-to HQ default choice, especially if you're running snakes.
Yeah. Does it make them battle line? I haven't checked.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
So, yeah, the Melosai Iron Scale and the Blood Rack Reducer, now both of them make both Blood Sisters and Bloodstalkers battle line.
Excellent. I still looking at them, I still wouldn't field them in squads bigger than 10, but
probably not due to their base size, but
yeah, because if you go to 15, you have too many there to try and take advantage of their base size, which means you have to go for a bigger frontage, which means you take more hits back potentially.
Yeah, but I definitely see the Iron Scale as being a really useful, probably default go-to general for people running snake armies, which are becoming quite more popular, and I can understand why. I might even give such an army a try myself.
Yeah, I look forward to probably being on the receiving end. But I do like in terms of just the Iron Scale, looking at it, it hasn't really changed at all from what we've seen. It's still a fantastic beat stick with a great ranged attack, ironically.
Yeah, it's got a great ranged attack and a similarly great melee attack.
I want to question how your stare, or what is that weapon attack described as?
I don't know. It's called Keldris Saith or something. It's the staff that she's got. I guess it must shoot magical bolts or something.
How does your magical bolt shooting staff outrange most of my guns?
Yeah, I don't know.
Magic, that's how.
Yeah, she's great. But now we should move on to we should move on to the Bloodwrack Medusa, who has received a number of changes.
Yeah.
For the Bloodwrack Medusa, there are 2 buffs and 1 nerf to her, all of which are very minor. So, firstly, the Bloodwrack Stare has increased in range. It's now 12 inches instead of 10 inches. So it's always good to encompass more hordes underneath the...
Yep, still has the same flamethrower style doing it. Yep, which is absolutely fantastic. Makes it a living Mortal Wounds battery.
Oh, it's absolutely great. I always send mine in at the enemy hordes if there is one. And if there's not, then I hold it back and use her as a buff.
Yeah.
In terms of nerf, though, the Whisper Claw on the one on foot now hits on a 4-up instead of a 3-up. But the Whisper Claw has gained its own new special ability, which allows it to inflict a mortal wound and end the attack sequence if you get a hit roll of 6.
With 4 attacks, 4s and 3s, -1/1 damage, you're fishing at that point. It's not a rule that I would consider in any way, shape, or form important to its overall use. I wouldn't even consider that relevant.
Best. If anything, it's more of a nerf because the hit roll is less.
Yeah. 4 attacks, you're fishing for mortal wounds. 3s to wound is fine, but the rest of the weapon is just kind of, sure, extra attacks, why not?
Yeah.
Still a character. Don't send it into anything.
Well, as characters go, it's one of the few spellcasty characters, like basic spellcasters, that actually can hold its own in melee if you send it up against like a small scouting unit or archers or something, because it does actually have a decent attack profile. With 3 attack profiles.
True. There are some really good combat casters out there, but they tend to be more on the combat side.
She's definitely more on the caster side, but her combat is nothing to be sniffed at. She can, if you're lucky, really surprise the enemy with how much she can do in melee. Unfortunately, to become really good in melee, you've got to dedicate that stuff to buffing her, and it's just not worth it when you've got Slaughter Queens and Marathi and Iron Scales around.
Yeah.
She has gone down in points as well, which is nice. She's gone down. So she's now 100 points, so she's gone down 40 points, which is nice. Nice round number.
Okay.
And the Bloodwrack Shrine version of her, completely the same. It's the same changes. The stare is now 12 inches, and the Whisper Claw changes are implemented. Actually, while we're on the shrines again, an interesting thing I noted, in the description, it no longer describes the shrine attacks as being part of a mount.
Oh!
So you can allocate your relics, I guess, to any of the weapons available on the shrines or the cauldrons, which could create some interesting effects.
I'll keep a lookout for that as we look through this, because I wasn't paying too much attention to the relics, to be honest. I did not pick up the fact that they had changed.
Yeah. They might FAQ it later, but for now, yeah, the description doesn't have the shrine attacks as part of a mount. They're just part of the model.
All the more reason to be taking the shrines. Always be taking the shrines, always be taking the cauldron. Just always do it.
Yeah. Now for one of the most controversial units and changes, next to the Hag Queen, is the Witch Elves.
Yeah, now this is where I'm gonna just disagree.
Well, I said controversial, so some people like the changes. A lot of people have hated. Obviously, the people hating on it speak louder than the people who don't mind it.
Yeah,
I personally don't mind the changes. Overall, it's a net effect of almost negligible.
it's a net gain of 0. And to be honest, the witch brew combined with how they used to work was just really, really dumb and infuriating to play against.
Yeah,
But really, really powerful. And obviously, when something powerful is modified even slightly, people get angry for some reason.
yeah. But, so here are the changes that they've actually made. So, the Hag model, the leader, instead of getting +1 to hit, she now adds 1 to her attack characteristics.
Do better anyway.
So that's the first change.
It
The
means
second
less
change,
annoying rolling.
yep. Well, I enjoyed the +1 to hit. Hitting on 2s for the leader was really nice. But with the other changes, I think a +1 attack is going to be more useful now. The standard bearer has had a slight rewording. So instead of rolling 2 dice and picking which one you want for morale,
Now it's just reroll.
It's now just a flat reroll of failed. So it's a little bit of a nerf. I'd rather roll 2 and pick, but
yeah, that's a balance thing. If I don't get that, you shouldn't get that. And to be honest, who cares? You have other ways of being immune to battle shock and Hornblower.
It's a slight change of wording, but otherwise it's still effectively a battle shock related upgrade.
Yeah. But seriously, who cares when you still have the Hornblower exactly the same? You can still run and charge, you still have a shit ton of attacks.
And the biggest change that people are upset about, but personally I don't mind it, Frenzied Fervor. So, Daughters of Khaine, when they were close to a hero, used to be able to get an extra attack each. Now instead, they add 1 to wound rolls. And they have to be wholly within 12 inches instead of, I think it was like within 7 inches or something like that.
Yeah. So, ironically though, to me this just says, cool, so your elves that have tiny knives now just do elf things of the usual 2 attacks, 3s and 3s.
Yeah, essentially. And as you'll see when we go through the allegiance traits, these guys can actually be buffed up to still be pretty scary. Maybe not like a gazillion attack scary, but in terms of what you could end up with there to hit, to roll, and potentially rend if you buff them appropriately.
I mean, you are looking at, with sacrificial knives, 4 attacks on the leader, plus 3 attacks on everyone else.
Yes, if you pair them with the sacrificial knives. Unfortunately, I built all mine and with shields, and I do not plan on buying another blob of 30, so I
told you so.
Mine with shields.
Oh, well, the shields still give the 5-up save, and they still have the annoying mortal wound.
Yes, they still have all that, and I have always subscribed to if your witches live longer, they're going to make more attacks anyway.
Yeah, you're still 2 attacks, 3s and 4s, 3s and 3s near a hero. That's still fairly reliable with, better than most, some equivalents, especially for 1 wound things. You're still 6 inches, you still move, you run and charge. I'm assuming they're still relatively the same points costs.
No, they've their points costs, interestingly enough, have gone down. So they're now 100 points for 10 instead of 120. But there's no longer any discount for buying 30 of them.
Okay, so they went up and then they went down, and now they're... Sorry, they went up and then they went down again with this. Yep. And now you no longer get the thing.
Yeah, I mean... No discount for 30.
Doesn't matter, you're still going to bring a horde of them.
Yeah, still 300 for 30.
Bargain.
100 for 10 is pretty damn good. Interestingly enough, while I'm talking about bulks, all bulk discounts have been eliminated from this army. There are no discounts for buying any units in bulk anymore.
Well, your hordes are really efficient, unlike similarly priced hordes. So I could understand that. Like,
yeah, it's just an interesting thing I noted.
Like, if I look at these compared to, if I was to take for a similar price of 300 points, I get 15 Saurus Guard. I will not bet on those Saurus Guard to even hold you off for a round.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
So and the Saurus Guard, they don't have any benefit to buying them in bulk either, but there's lots of other hordes. For example, same thing with the Saurus Warriors. They're 90 points. If I was to build a similarly sized, they're also 10 models, but they've got a 4-up save. But if I was still to put them against you, even with that 4-up save, I still don't expect them to live past the first round, even with the current changes to them, to the Witch Elves.
Yeah, exactly. Witch Elves are still quite effective.
They're still going to form the core of your army. You're probably still going to want at least one large brick and probably two smaller bricks.
Unless, of course, you're making a snake-based army.
That's true, but I still think bringing like minimum squads of 10 to MSU and take objectives is still the way to go.
Yeah. Well, if there's one thing that I can say about the changes they've made overall, once we go through the other stuff, is that they've really made it so that there are no auto takes. You can play this army in any way and make it work. If you want all snakes, you can play snakes. If you want all witches, you can play all witches.
From what I was reading before, snakes work better now than they did before. They were still good, they were still a viable option, but they didn't, they weren't the auto, yeah, I want to win, let's play that.
Yeah. So moving on quickly, Sisters of Slaughter, other than the same changes to the Hag and Standard Bearer, they're exactly the same as they were.
I did notice they have a change to their pile-in and how that works, though.
It works exactly the same, it's just been reworded to make it make more sense.
Just give me a moment as I try to find it.
So they still get their 6-inch combat pile-in, which they've always had. It's just been reworded to make more sense than it used to. But yeah, other than that, Sisters of Slaughter haven't changed at all. They're identical. The Canaanite Shadow Stalkers are unchanged, which makes me personally very sad because I felt there was a lot of potential to create several units out of them, but they are what they are.
Hey, they look cool.
Oh, and interestingly, Sisters of Slaughter are still 120 points, but they've lost their bulk discount now.
To be fair, yeah, I'm reading it again. Unfortunately, they did. I clearly read it wrong when I was going over it earlier, but yeah, that actually really annoys me. I think that should have been nerfed into the ground.
Oh, I've noticed there are a few units around these days that can do that now, so it's not exclusive to them anymore.
No, but it's more annoying with them.
Yes, but at the same time, they've technically they've nerfed them by keeping them at 120 points and no discount for running a big brick of 30.
To be fair, did you ever really want to run a big brick of 30? I found their best use was to just use that ability to pen your opponent in.
Yeah, that's how I use them. I usually run 1 or 2 minimum squads around a big blob of witches and just use them to take advantage of
like
that.
They have excellent board control.
Yeah.
And that's what Sigmar's about, board control.
Yeah. So Shadow Stalkers unchanged, Blood Sisters and Blood Stalkers are unchanged from their updates in the what is it, the Blood and Passion box or whatever it is?
Marathi.
No, the
the Blood and Pain, the one with the really cool Lord for Slaanesh, coming soon.
Yeah, that box. So they changed their profiles in that, and now that's been updated here. So they're the same as those profiles.
Yep, still fantastic. Bloodstalkers much improved.
If you didn't know what the changes were, the Heartseeker bows now get 2 shots.
Yep, your bows outshoot, again, 90% of my guns.
The Heartseeker rule has been reworded so that it always gets its mortal wound on a hit roll of 6.
Yeah.
Because the way it was worded before, you couldn't do that if you used Marathi to make them shoot in the hero phase. So they've reworded that, so now it just always happens. And the big thing for the Blood Sisters, the spear ones, the turn to crystal rule has been severely nerfed, which changes the way you run Blood Sisters. So now, instead of making attacks that deal mortal wounds, you have to wait till the end of the combat phase, and then roll 1 dice for each model left alive in the unit, which, probably not going to be many at the end of the combat phase, because Blood Sisters is still quite fragile. And then they do a wound on a 3-up.
Although I do read that, and it's not for every one of your guys within 1 inch, it's for the entire unit. So there is an argument there to try and take bigger units of like 15 man to try and get more use out of that, but at the same time, that's kind of a trap.
Yeah, the Turn to Crystal ability is, you can't rely on it anymore, because the odds of the Blood Sisters surviving to the end of combat,
it's a trap. That ability is basically just a trap now. Focus more on the glaives being pretty fantastic.
Yeah, they're still the same as they were, which is fantastic. And with all the buffs you can give them, it can work out pretty well for you.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Doomfire Warlocks, there are actually quite a number of changes to these, which surprised me. Most of them are pretty good. I'm actually pretty happy with it. There's arguably only one real nerf to them, but it probably doesn't matter. So, the Doomfire Crossbow now has a range of 12 inches instead of 10 inches.
Again, somehow outshooting my guns.
And the to wound roll for these is now 3-up instead of 4-up. They used to be 4s and 4s, now they're 4s and 3s. And then same with the Curse Scimitar, it now wounds on a 3-up instead of a 4-up. So overall that gives them much more killing power than what they used to have, because in my early days of running Daughters, I ran Doomfire Warlocks a lot, and I was fooled by their many attack profiles thinking that they were decent, but I found out the hard way that with 4 and 4 they would often just whiff everything and nothing would go through.
I remember baiting them in a few times and just murdering them.
Yeah, their output on paper was deceiving, but with wounding on 3-ups, I think it's going to be a bit more reliable now.
The Doomfire was their main take.
Yeah.
And that's unchanged.
No, there is a small change in there. The Master of Warlocks now gets add 1 to his attacks characteristics, but only of his melee weapon this time. So he used to add 1 to hit rolls to his crossbow and scimitar, but now he just gets an extra attack with his scimitar.
Yeah. I like the extra attack more than the +1 to hit, because it means you can roll it all as one giant pool.
It does make it easier, but I would have preferred +1 to hit, because there is no real other way to make these guys hit on anything other than 4+.
Yeah, well, you're still really fast cavalry shooting goddamn magic fire. Can't have everything.
Yes. Yes, well, like I said, with their increased combat output thanks to the new hit rolls, I think if I run these guys again, I'll be using them a lot more aggressively now, especially with the other 2 changes. So the Doomfire Coven has changed, so now you add 1 to casting rolls for 5 or more models instead of 10 or more.
Always good. They come in minimum units of 5 anyway, don't they?
Yeah, so now you get that roll with a minimum unit instead of having to go to a 10-man unit to get +1 to casting, which is pretty good. And the Doomfire, only a minor change. The range of it has been reduced to 12 inches. It used to be 18. So now they have to get a lot closer to use their Doomfire. But otherwise, it's exactly the same. If you've got a unit of 10, they do 6 mortal wounds. Any less than that, and the mortal wounds becomes a dice roll.
Yeah. They're still a very good unit. The fact that you can get the... You know what? I'd still use them largely the same way. I'm not even sure. I think Doomfire is actually a bit of a trap, honestly, with its range now decreased.
With its range decreased, it seems like that, but I think what you do with Doomfire Warlocks now is you can run a small squad of 5 and use them quite aggressively, or even run your unit of 10 and charge them up.
Yeah, I'm thinking...
You're no longer losing that +1 to casting roll as soon as one dies.
Yeah, I think the more competitive option is probably the 2 units of 5, though. Like,
Maybe.
with the 14 inch and the 2 wounds and the 5 up, you have these guys and the Sisters of Slaughter basically controlling the board, while these guys are able to output ranged fire at a decent range with decent effectiveness, and even take the fight to melee. So they're not going to be perfect. Well, they're perfect skirmishers, really.
Yeah,
They're everything. They're everything you want out of a skirmishing unit. That's also able to contribute across 3 phases.
yes, exactly. And let's not forget, of course, they will be able to take a spell from the spell list to cast instead of their Doomfire. So it can be a good option, because their points have been reduced as well. They're down 20 points to 120 points. They used to be 140.
Ooh, yeah, at 120 points, I'd say they're an auto take.
Yeah, I feel like a really good way to use these guys is to give them a buff spell as their second spell, and you hold a small squad of 5 back, and use them to cast some of their heftier buffing spells that the daughters have. And then after you've done that, that's when you run them off to take objectives or whatever you need them to do.
Yeah, although I do think it would be funny. Like the line between taking these units are competitive, taking them is competitive, and the line between that's just not competitive at all is the crazy idea I now have of an all Doomfire Warlock army, just as many of them as you can get.
Unfortunately, they do not battle line, so
Fortunately, your battle line got cheaper,
yes.
so not much of a tax there.
Yes, less tax to bring an all Warlock army. I think that should be, now that you mention it, would be quite interesting to see an all Warlock army.
I'm kind of picturing something with minimum units of
that would be quite scary.
witches or Sisters of Slaughter are still battle line. They can be.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd take minimum units of Sisters of Slaughter. Probably a cauldron to keep up with these guys. Probably be using the Steed of Shadows. No, the Blood Rack. The Blood Rack Medusa with this.
Yeah, the Blood Rack with Steed of Shadows, so she can keep up with them.
And the other one, the Cauldron, just running behind, just auto advancing the 6 with command point. And then that entire army just cavalry rushes forward.
Yeah, I think what you do for that cavalry rush army is you take one big blob of 20 warlocks and then several minimum squads of 5.
Yeah.
That way you can run your big blob up, it can take the hits and dish out 6 mortal wounds a turn until it gets reduced, while your other little warlocks concentrate on buffing the big unit.
And then your Sisters of Slaughter just play the objective game in the background while they have to deal with 14-inch move cavalry.
Yeah.
And quite a lot of them.
That sounds quite interesting. I'd be interested to see how that works on paper, but
or how that works on tabletop.
How that works in the tabletop, but I am not buying more Doomfire warlocks.
Well, I mean, what are they? They're only, like... Let's see. Doomfire Warlocks. They are only...
They're cheap models, but I did not enjoy painting them.
And... 50 for 5. I mean, temporarily out of stock online.
So now we move on to the Life Takers and Heart Renders.
Yes. So, now, before, it was pretty obvious to me which one was worth it.
Now it's pretty obvious to me which one is worth it again, but it's the opposite of what used to be. For the Heart Renders have received no changes whatsoever. They are exactly identical to what they used to be before. The only difference is their points, which have gone down to 80 instead of being 90.
Okay.
The Life Takers, they're still 80 points for 5.
The Heart Renders are still good.
The Heart Renders, compared to everything else, actually look quite bad.
I'm looking at them. I think they're still, like, not terrible. I mean, I'd definitely take Doomfires over them, though.
Yeah,
and before I'd probably take them over Doomfires.
Yeah. I would definitely take Doomfires over these now. But anyway, the change is made. So, as I said before, the Heart Renders have received no changes, but the Life Takers have received a couple of curious ones. So, the Harridan adds an extra attack. So the bleeder unit gets an extra attack with its weapon. But the Death on the Wind ability has changed and been reworded. So now they add 1 to damage and to rend on on the turn that they make a charge. Whereas it used to be just 1 to damage.
Oh, okay. So they get +1 to wound and damage on the turn they charge. They get a cavalry charge.
To rend, +1 to rend.
Or to rend and damage. They get a cavalry charge.
Yeah. So that actually makes them far more effective in combat than they used to be, on the charge anyway.
Yeah. Now, they are what's their base size? 30?
They're a 40 mil base, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that's unfortunate that, but I guess that's because they've got that to wound 4 up there.
Yeah, the thing that made Heart Renders the better choice used to be the fact that all the Life Takers got was 2 damage. They had no rend, and they were essentially just fast Witch Elves that were pretty much identical, aside from their ability to run away after a fight.
Yeah, still extremely useful, and something that I'm still questioning why they took it away from my skinks.
So with those changes, I actually feel the Life Takers are more worth it than Heart Renders, especially when now both are the same points cost. Heart Renders just look quite pathetic with their single attack in both range and melee.
Yeah, but it's a pretty decent ranged attack.
It looks decent, but when you realize, you're only getting 5 shots on a minimum squad, I found in practice, 5 units does nothing to anything. 10 models does a bit, but it's only chip wounds rather than any significant damage.
It might just be me with my Caradons looking at it and going, wow, I wish my guns were as effective as that javelin, but hey.
Well, yeah.
You do have an extremely poignant point there, though. It is only 5 attacks. It is 12-inch range, and it's only 1 attack on their barbed javelin in melee. It's not a particularly effective weapon. It's somewhat reliable, though.
It's reliable at range. Unfortunately, in melee, you can expect almost nothing to happen.
You can expect that you should never have them there.
No.
And if they are, you might as well just remove them from the board.
Pretty much. And due to their close range, they're going to be charged if you bring them in any numbers to actually do any damage.
Yeah. The Life Takers...
So I'd rather take Life Takers, someone who can actually charge in and do something while they're there. And then if you roll lucky enough, if you roll 4+, you can then flee and not get attacked back.
Look, I know they're 40 mil bases, but I'm seeing especially for 80 points, I'm seeing a max unit of these being, well, the thing. I could see them being really effective.
Fight or flight happens after the unit has made its attack, so Life Takers can charge in, make their attacks, and if they roll that lucky 4+, they can just fly out without getting attacked back.
Yeah, max unit of 15, uses Descend into battle, gets a good frontage, hopefully they descend nearby someone who can give them a command point reroll, charge on in, try and get in as many targets as possible, so that, like, charging as many enemy units as possible, activate once, fight, probably going to be culled down to extinction, but then they get to run away and use their, hopefully with their fight and flight, and then anything that left, hopefully you can get the double turn and then run off to objectives.
Well, if you get the fight or flight, the enemy won't get to attack them back, so the whole unit will survive, at least until the enemy's next turn where they charge them and kill them all. But
but if you get a potential double turn there...
Yes. If you get a double turn, that can be pretty annoying.
You can cycle charge these things in, and they're better cavalry. They're the shock cavalry to the Doomfire skirmish cavalry.
Yeah. So I like those changes. And finally, we come to the Endless Spells and Endless Invocation, as I like to call it.
Oh, the Avatar of Khaine on foot.
As far as I know, he hasn't changed at all. He's exactly the same, aside from the rewording of his morale boosting ability.
Okay.
But otherwise, he hasn't changed. His points have changed. Where did he go? He's gone down 10 points.
Okay, sure.
So, meh.
Yeah, meh.
Oh, and that's another interesting I forgot to mention. The Blood Sisters actually went up 10 points, the only unit to go up in points with this new battle tome,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I found
Okay.
interesting for a unit that's worse than what it used to be.
Uh. Eh. I I'm not sure I would agree with that statement.
Well, at least they're still cheaper than Bloodstalkers, who are still at 140 points.
Yeah, but then you remember those Bloodstalkers shoot better than most of the Caradron army.
Yes, well, they shoot better than a lot of other factions.
Like 24 inches, threes and threes, -1/1. That is a better bow than most guns. Like,
Yeah.
anyway, so onto the endless spells. The Bloodwreck Viper, starting off with it's
Yeah, we've got
casting
Viper
value.
and Blade Wind. As a general rule, I don't like predatory endless spells.
No, they're quite terrible unless you can bind them or have a special rule where you can
Something
control
doesn't
them
feel.
only.
Yeah, something doesn't feel right about paying points for something that my opponent can use against me.
No, as with any sort of predatory spell, the idea that I always would say is don't bring them.
Yeah, fortunately they're quite cheap. They're 40 points for each.
That seems to be Games Workshop's solution, make them cheap to tempt you into doing them, but again, they are traps. Because this is an army that wants the double turn, and these things punish you for taking it if you cast them.
Do they?
Yeah, because then your opponent will get to move them.
Yeah.
And this is an army where you want to be close. You're charging up as fast as possible to get into their lines. You're going to take the fight to them. Your spellcasters need to be pretty close with these, looking at their casting value and their range, because the Bloodwrack Viper is going to be set up wholly within 9 inches. The same with the Blade Wind. The Blade Wind, however, is better because it gets to move. Actually, they both get to move.
Yeah, the Viper gets to move too.
They both get to move, but again, you've got to set them up within 9, and then you've got to move them into the target, and for that, and then of course, if you're trying to charge in or getting ready to charge in, and you take the double turn, your opponent just moves them back onto you into the middle of your charging lines.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, that's why I don't like predatory spells as a general rule. But as predatory spells go, they seem decent-ish.
I gotta say, I'm not a fan of the Bloodwrack Viper in terms of rules. It looks fantastic, but its casting value is way too high.
I'd definitely say the Blade Wind is the winner out of these two, because at least it has
another. And I think
ability.
That model looks like they put a bunch of crap together.
Well, I mean, in terms of rules.
Yeah, that's the problem. Great rules, terrible model.
Because it does the mortal wounds as you'd expect, but the additional ability of negating cover can be quite useful. So if you're running a shooty snack army, that would be the only one I think you would consider.
That's quite interesting. So it negates cover.
Yeah,
within 12 inches of this model. And I just thought of a really weird interaction, because the Caradrons get cover when they're inside their ships, because they count as garrisons. So you actually negate that, because they count as being within range of that.
Yeah, it would.
So...
because you don't apply the cover modifier for saving rolls is the exact word.
Yeah, within 12 inches, and they are technically within 12 inches if that is within range of the ship.
Yeah. But then we come to the cool thing, the Heart of Fury, which, as a few people suspected, is not a spell, but an endless prayer or invocation. You cast it like you would any other prayer. On a 3-up, it succeeds. And like Magmic Invocations and the Khorne ones, at the end of the battle round, you roll a dice to see if it goes away. It goes away on a 4-up, or if you've got an avatar within 6 inches of it, so it has to be pretty close, it goes away.
Yeah.
He's on a 3-up. And the ability it has, of course, is really good.
Yeah.
Reducing damage by 1 is invaluable in most metas. especially for protecting your cauldrons, because you know the enemy will always send their biggest damaging things after the cauldrons.
It's any unit that's going to be within it is probably going to benefit unless they're bringing skeletons or bone reapers. Because the deadliest things, I'm thinking of some of the really powerful combos that factions have involve a lot of 2 damage attacks. Iron Jaw, blobs, half guard, murder squads, all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you're playing against Troggoths or ogres,
Troggoths, yep,
or
ogres.
Sons of Behemoth.
No, nothing helps with that.
Well, reducing damage by 1 is a little helpful.
No, if you want to stop the Sons of Behemoth, you nerf their hit rolls.
But yes, still very, very useful ability to make your witch elves or whatever you want to survive longer.
Yeah, a very good thing. I'd probably
But obviously
bring it every
be careful where you place it. If you're going to place it in front of a horde of skeletons, you're an idiot.
Yeah, don't do that. Place it near things that have multi-damage. Monsters are a good thing. A lot of Seraphon monsters, a lot of Skaven heavy units are going to be nerfed from it. Troggoths, again.
Cavalry units that have 2 damage on the charge.
Yep.
Things like that. Yeah, okay, so that's all the war scrolls.
Yeah, so I think at this point we'll just shotgun out the allegiance stuff that's changed.
Yep. So, allegiance abilities haven't changed. It's still the same 6 up, feel no pain, and the
chart for the blood rights, which are still the same. Battle round 1, that's all the same.
Yep, they're all the same. Obviously, round 1 is crap, but from then on, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
The Temples of Khaine, they've included the Zainthar Kai from Marathi, and a new one, Keltnar.
Yeah. Although, quickly on them, I want to say that I think that Kael'bron is the clear winner out of all of them.
I'm going to disagree with you on that one.
I would normally agree with you that some of the other ones are better. Here's the reason why I think Kael'bron is good in a current competitive meta. Currently, the shooting factions are doing very well, and this is a faction that doesn't have really many answers to shooting other than to get up in the face of whatever's shooting you. And this can help keep you alive. I think it's a really good fallback, reliable one to take.
Well, since I've got the page open here, so what Kael'bron does, the core ability is that you subtract 1 from hit rolls made by ranged weapons against Kael'bron.
And then on top of that, they have their command ability, which I absolutely loves. It gives you even more mobility over the battlefield, which is essential.
Yeah.
Their command trait is not really a concern, and neither is their artifact. But it's those two that immediately draw me to it as a very good tactical option to take it.
Well, personally, I think the ability, the -1 from shooting attacks, is only an average ability. Most shooting armies these days are fishing for 6s for mortal wounds, so they don't really care about your -1s.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree again on that, but we're running out of time for that discussion.
It's definitely useful, but Masters of the Shadow Paths, it's a teleport command ability.
Always extremely useful. I think it's a very good one.
But it is definitely a nerf from what they used to be able to do.
True. Now, let's focus on the 2 new ones, because the other ones are pretty much all the same. They're all
very different.
Well,
they need discussing. But first we'll do the new one, Keltnar. So Keltnar has Strike and Fade as its ability. Units can retreat and still charge later, which I think is an excellent ability and one that Daughters of Khaine
really didn't need, but now they have.
Well, you used to be able to get it, and you still can with a specific War Scroll battalion, but this just lets the whole army get it. And when I ran that battalion, I always found it very useful.
Because it's an incredibly useful ability that they honestly shouldn't have, I'll say that.
Yeah. And they got their command ability, Bleed the Mind, which is just one of those abilities that lets you select a unit, and if your enemy rolls ones when attacking you in melee, you do a mortal wound to them.
Yeah, which is honestly one of the most shitful things ever.
It's a great ability, I think.
See, I think this is good, and I'm looking at the rest of it. Unfortunately, it does have the circling flock, which I like,
Yes.
where you summon a unit of Canary Harpies.
Yep, a unit of 5 harpies can come down. I think it's a very cute ability. Doesn't really do much for the commander, but it's a cute ability. But if you want to build an army where you have a kick-ass commander with a cool command trait, you probably wouldn't choose Keltnar.
No, I definitely think when it comes to this army, though, the tactical options are the better ones. Keltnar and Calibron.
Yeah, I feel if you're running Keltnar, the unit you select as a general is probably going to be a backline buffer unit rather than a frontline fighter. And the artifact is actually one of the better ones, I think, for the compulsory artifacts. It's just your standard on a 6 score 2 hits instead of 1 in melee.
Yeah.
Which, when you look at using that on, say, one of the shrine weapons, like the goad sticks or the blades, could be quite useful for getting more out of that. So, overall, Tim gives Keltnar a B for usefulness.
Yeah. Just looking through them, I do see Calibron still as my favorite, and I see a lot of lists that I could build that would work with that. Keltnar as well. The main draw is that retreat and charge.
Yeah. So we move on to the Kraith, which is both one of the worst and the best. The Kraith was the worst in the old battle
Without a doubt.
because it did absolutely nothing for you. Now it's like if you want to run a Sisters of Slaughter army with nothing but Sisters of Slaughter, this is the one that you choose.
Which you probably shouldn't do, but regardless.
it makes it a viable option because it's actually really, really good if you're running Sisters of Slaughter. Its main ability is Sisters of Slaughters that have fought in the combat phase. On a 5-up, they can fight again. Just lay in those attacks.
Yeah, you're going to need to, because they're not your best unit in terms of damage output.
And then their command ability, Sisters of Slaughters that are nearby, get add 1 to wound rolls. So they essentially give them the same thing that Witch Elves have, which
except
fixes that,
for a
that
CP.
For a CP, yes. But then that ties into the command trait. So if you kill anything and your general is on the field in the Kraith army, you get a command point.
Here's the problem that I see. You're going to need to be killing things that, fortunately it says any attacks made by Kraith units. You're going to need to be killing those things with things that aren't Sisters of Slaughter.
Ew. Sisters of Slaughter, you probably... They can be just as killy as the witches, really.
They're pretty mediocre.
Especially once all their buffs go through.
You've got to put those buffs on them. You have more efficient units. I mean, it makes them viable, but overall, I would put this one again. You're right. It is good, but it's also the worst.
I gave it a C purely on the fact that if you're running Sisters of Slaughter and lots of them, this is the perfect one for you. If you're not, then it's utterly useless. And the artifact of power that they get is pretty crap. You get 1 attack with your weapon that you choose, and you deal D6 mortal wounds with it.
I'd probably put it a C-.
Draichi Ganeth, which was my primary one of using, is still pretty good. So they used to just get +1 to hit rolls on the charge, the whole army. Now they get add 1 to rend if they make a charge.
Yeah, I like that.
That's very useful. So now they get their +1 to hit as a command ability, but it can only target Witch Elves or Sisters of Slaughter.
Yeah, I like it as a command ability more because... Well, see Lumineth for why things shouldn't hit on 2s.
I would have... Well, the funny thing is that as a command ability, it does make Witch Elves and Sisters of Slaughter hit on 2s. I used to run Dratchy Geneth because it used to make all those things that hit on 4s hit on 3s.
Yeah.
It made a lot of the weaker stuff more viable.
Unfortunately, I don't particularly. Its command trait, I think, is probably the worst of them. I do like its artifact though.
The command trait is average. It's, add 1 to bravery characteristics within 12 inches. I mean, it's good that it's a buff command trait, and it will help if you're running, your hordes of witches, because they will die. And yeah, the artifact is probably the best one of the compulsory runs, I would argue.
Yeah.
Add 2 attacks if they charge.
This just
amazing.
This just lets you be more efficient. Is it the most? I mean, like anything, it's going to be a tie between how are you playing the game. Are you going for the objectives and playing the long game, which is going to depend on whatever you're facing, or are you going to try and just run up in their face and kill them? And Drychi and Hagnar are still, the go-tos for that.
Xanthar Kai is the other new one from Marathi book. It's remained unchanged. They haven't changed anything. As a quick recap, you get +1 to bravery, and you get an extra artifact as your ability. Your command ability is to add 1 to attack characteristics in the melee phase. The command trait is a 5+. On a 5+, a unit within 3 inches suffers D3 mortal wounds at the end of the combat phase. And the Crimson Talisman is its artifact, which is a really good one for an Iron Scale or something big. Subtract 1 from rune rolls made against the bearer.
Ooh, I would every day put that on top of a cauldron.
Absolutely. So this is clearly the if the Kraith was I love Sister Slaughter, Xanthar Kai is I love snakes.
Yeah, and unfortunately it means it's really not that great, even though it does have a few things you can do with it.
Yeah. And the last one, Hagnar. So I gave Xanthar Kai a B-, by the way.
I would do lower.
Yeah. Hagnar is the original city of Marathi. Still remains a very good one.
Yep, still has that.
Its core ability is counting the rounds as 1 higher, which is incredibly useful, and since you get to start at effectively round 2, where all of your good abilities kick in.
It's the solution. What did I put it? The first time around in the Beginner's Guide to Daughters of Khaine, it's your decision anxiety solution.
Yeah.
If you don't know what to play, just say you're Hagnar. Nothing in it is particularly bad.
The command ability is pretty average, really. Lets your cauldrons move a little bit faster. But the conditions for it are really strict to get it off.
Yeah, but you can move it further. Extra movement is nothing to be sniffed at.
No. The command trait is the same as it was before. It's just been changed to be wholly within 12 instead of what it was before.
Yes.
So get that 5 up, feel no pain in that small bubble, which is now smaller since it's wholly within. So if you're playing Hagnar now, you're running a much tighter blob than what you used to.
Yeah, you're still running it's still the good old Warhammer Fantasy death brick.
Yeah, and the artifact is not a bad one.
No, it's pretty good.
Add 1 to the damage characteristics of 1 of the weapons. So that could be pretty good. Imagine if you put that on, I don't know, say the goaded blades or the basic knives on a cauldron. So now you've got 8 attacks that are 3 up, 4 up.
I think it'd be pretty good on the Iron Scale as well. Give it D3 + 1.
Technically, you could put it on the Avatar of Khaine sword to have a 4 damage, 4 damage sword attacks.
Ooh, welcome to Flavor Town.
I wouldn't do that.
No, that sounds terrible, but it sounds fun.
You could. So I gave Hagnar a B+. It's probably, that's the highest grade I gave all of these.
Yeah.
Overall, I'm pretty happy with most of the artifacts. There's only there's three factions with good artifacts and 3 factions with crappy ones. Most of the abilities are pretty boring, but obviously the Hagnar one is excellent, and so is the Keltnar one. But yeah, overall, there's some good changes, and you can clearly see that they're trying to encourage different types of play. Encouraging
Yeah.
this is a slaughter,
I think
encouraging
that was the
more
one
snake.
thing. It was very monotone in terms of, what's the best way to play these guys? Well, it's simply just this.
Yeah, the old book was definitely you play one of two ways, and that's
Yeah.
it.
The most amount of flavor you have is how efficient. In which way do you want to be efficient?
Yeah. So quickly go on to command traits.
I want to quickly
There are,
go over to artifacts, actually, because I'm
you
just
got the
looking at
artifacts.
them now, and I'm just going to point out a few things. In terms of the gifts of Marathi, I think they're all terrible compared to the ones we just looked at, with the exceptions being the
Oh,
Shadrakar's Fang and 1001 Dark Blessings. I think the only one good ones in that list.
yep. Do you want me to tell you the changes that they made? The old
I
ones?
think we're running a little low on time at this point.
Well, I agree with you. 1001 Dark Blessings is definitely the best one there, followed by the Fang. 1001 Dark Blessing used to be +1 to save. Now it's a 5-up Filno, which is
Yeah,
excellent.
Amulet of Dark Fire is the worst case of negating a spell effect I've ever seen, because it only affects their mortal wounds.
Yeah, it's pretty crap.
The Masters of Blood. No, there's a command traits. Where am I?
You want to look at the artifacts of Shadow. The biggest change to one, and
Yeah.
makes it arguably one of the best ones there, is the Shadow Stone is now an add 1 to casting roll. It used to
Yeah.
be reroll ones, but add 1 is far better. So you're really going to have to decide, do you want to pick that or the Crystal Heart to cast an extra spell? But I'd probably go the Shadow Stone for the reliability.
Yeah, I do see there that the Sevenfold Shadow is still fine-ish, depending on what you put it on, so it could open up some doors for you.
It's pretty... It's an average one.
I see it as a way to, hey, here's the blood rack. Oh no, it's over here now.
Yeah, but if you really want to move it, you probably just take the Steeds of Shadow spell.
Pretty much.
The Relics of Khaine, like before, there's very few changes. The Crimson Shard has been
The
changed
Iron
to
Circlet and Crimson Shard are just...
Yeah, the Iron Circlet is definitely the best one. Closely followed by the Canaanite Pendant, because, who doesn't want to do 3 prayers in a single turn?
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, those two.
The Crimson Shard has changed, but it's effectively the same. Although, funnily enough, you could have a wound roll of 1+ or even 0+ if you stacked some buffs. I don't know why you would do that, but you could.
Wound. There are some things that do that. I was looking at the wrong one when I yelled that out. I was looking at the Canaanite Pendant, but I said Crimson Shard because that's got a really cool name.
Yeah, but otherwise, all of these are pretty good except for the Rune of Khaine, really. That's the only dud one there. So
Yeah.
they're pretty good.
So real quick, we'll shotgun these out. Paragons of Murder. These are for any elf general. And the command traits.
The command traits. So the command traits are unchanged except for 2 small changes. Zealous Orator is now add 2 to Bravery instead of add 1, and they replaced Sacrificial Overseer to what it is now, which is add 1 to the hit rolls made with melee weapons. Keep in mind that is all melee weapons.
Ooh.
So on a shrine, that's all of them. So could be worth not taking a temple for that. Could be.
Okay, so I literally see 2 of them that I would take, and the rest... Well, 3 of them. I would see 3 of them I would take. But only 2 of them I really see as, like, the competitive ones. Even the Terrifying Beauty comes in, like, dead last in terms of performance. It's subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks that target this general. Sure, that's fine. Whatever.
It's boring, but it's good.
It's boring, but it's good. But Sacrificial Overseer immediately goes to my mind of Blender, but then Bathed in Blood immediately signals to me as actually pretty good.
Really? I feel it's one of the worst ones there.
Think about it this way.
Wound and then you heal 1.
it's wound healing in an army in a game where wounds don't really come back.
I feel you'd be better off just putting your command trait into killing more, because if your enemy doesn't attack you back, then you're not going to die.
Yeah, the reason I single out Bathed in Blood is I'm not thinking about putting on a blood rack or on a shrine or a cauldron.
If
I'm
you put it
actually
on
thinking
anything
it
else,
for an iron scale.
I don't know. I don't think that would work as well as you think. Anything other than a shrine would just die too quickly for it to be of any value. Remembering that they only have like 5 or 6 wounds.
Well, it's going to go up to 7 wounds, and it's going to be healing 1. I'm not thinking like competitive large scale game where you have the points. I'm thinking smaller scale.
Maybe.
And I'm also thinking as like a secondary thing, as like a secondary general. Like they're your general, but they're not going to be the full force of your army. They're not going to be part of your main bulk. I do. Although I do like the idea of putting it on a cauldron, just because I want that thing to stay alive.
I wouldn't do it, because I wouldn't want to give up a temple for that. Not worth.
No.
But interestingly, we now have 2 extra command trait charts for Bloodrack Medusas and Iron Scales.
Yes.
And these look pretty cool. For the Medusa, you can take Arcane Mastery, which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
Reroll 1s, so you can still get that ability.
For
So
casting, dispelling, and unbinding. Yes.
Yeah.
And then they subtract 1 from hit rolls.
Yep,
that target it from the riding coils. The Fearsome Presence, nah.
Nah, that's the worst one of that lot.
And then the Iron Scale has its own. And now...
Yep. The best one is definitely the first one, the Veteran.
Yeah.
Getting extra command points is always good, nothing to sniff at. Impenetrable Scales is boring, add 1 to saves, whoop-de-doo. And Fueled Revenge is probably the worst, because anything that's once per battle I just don't like.
Yeah, I missed that it was once per battle, so I was just rereading it. Yep.
Yeah, it'd be great if it wasn't, but...
Welcome to Saurus Town. You have a great general with terrible general command traits. The Veteran. The Veteran every day.
If any of those are worth not taking a temple for, I would only say only the Bloodrack Medusa Arcane Mastery would be worth not taking a temple for, because then you stack that with the artifact, so you're getting +1 and rerolls of 1.
It's unfortunate. I kind of prefer armies where you don't have to take a sub-faction, and you perform just as well. Unfortunately, in this case, it is... You will want to take a temple, just because they're the better option.
Most of the time. I feel if you do the Bloodrack Medusa that I just spoke of, or if you do the Overseer to make a blendy general, it might be worth not taking a temple for those.
You're missing out on... I would normally agree with you, but the abilities, the base abilities that several of them give you, are too good to pass up, and probably too important to the army's overall efficiency on the board to grinding up. Because while your general it can do some work, it's still only a single model entity.
Oh, absolutely. If you're playing competitively, you would always take a temple. But if you're playing a fun game...
If you're playing a fun game, I can immediately see a really dumb list I want to do right now.
Yeah, you could do some interesting and dumb things.
I see a lot of narrative things I want to do, because you know how much I love narrative.
Yes. So let's go to spell laws, Jay. There's a couple of changes, not many.
Yeah, Lore of Shadows.
Spell laws is very important, though. So, important to know is that Steeds of Shadows, its casting value has gone up 1 to 6.
That's probably a good thing, to be honest.
Still a good spell.
Yeah.
I view casting value of 6 as being basically a 50-50 chance if you've got no buffs of getting it off. Mirror Dance has completely changed.
Yes, I was reading this earlier. So, has casting value of 6. If successfully cast, pick 2 friendly Daughters of Khaine heroes wholly within 18 inches of the caster that are visible to them. Remove those heroes from the battlefield and set them up again anywhere more than 9 inches from any enemy units. These heroes cannot move in the following movement phase.
Yeah, so it's teleport 2 heroes.
Hey, Marathi.
Which is,
Bye, Marathi.
yeah,
Marathi's now up in your front line.
which is definitely a lot better than what it used to be, which was swap 2 heroes.
While that was fun and gimmicky, it never had a use.
Yeah, it was completely useless. Withering is still good. Mind Razor, however, is the big one. So
Yeah,
Mind Razor has gone up to casting value 8, which is really high. So
Ooh.
even if you get a +1 to cast from being Marathi or for taking that relic, you're still got a slightly less than 50% chance of getting it off. But they reworded it so that you get the extra 1 damage for making a charge move in that turn. So you don't have to worry about being a higher bravery anymore.
Okay, that's something.
So
I still
the
think
best
the
spell.
Withering and Mind Razor are your essentials. You have to take them.
Mind Razor is definitely a have to take, but
Yeah.
I would
Mind
say
Razor,
only
then the Withering, then probably in terms of priority of what you should be thinking about, Mind Razor, because you need that rend.
Yes, but only take Mind Razor if you're running a hero that has +1 to cast. Otherwise, it is not
Marathi.
worth it.
Put that on Marathi, I assume. Yeah.
Put it on Marathi if you're running her. Put it on your 5 Warlocks if you're running them. Or put them on a Medusa with the relic that gives them +1.
Yeah. Something's got a +1.
Yeah. Even the Withering at casting value 7, I would recommend putting on something with a +1.
Yeah, the Withering is probably your next most important spell. Steed of
as always,
Shadows is
if
good.
you're running, yeah, Steed of Shadows, yeah, that's what I was about to say. Steed of Shadows is good. So I always put that on a Blood Rack Medusa on a shrine.
And then the last one, probably the one I would take the least, would be Pit of Shades.
I think Shroud of Despair is probably the worst one.
Absolutely. Mirror Dance is super situational, but hey, if you have a list that uses it and you have heroes that you want to shunt up the board,
I would say, yeah, if you've got a spare caster and you don't know what to give them, because you've already taken the other ones, give them Mirror Dance.
But in terms of like, if you just want something that deals more damage, I like Pit of Shades because there's you're rolling that 2d6 higher than their movement.
Pit of Shades, yeah, I wouldn't take in a general competitive list.
No, not in a competitive list.
Unless you're facing Stormcast or Dwarves, there is just so many things with movement 6, and at movement 6 it means you're doing an average of no or 1 mortal wound, at which point you might as well have just casted Arcane Bolt.
Also, ogres. I'm like a standard on-foot ogre list. It's based on their movement characteristic. So they're what's on their war scroll, not the plus extra movement they get from being hungry fat boys.
Yeah.
It's a utility spell. Fortunately, you get to pick your spells,
Yeah, it's very low priority.
It's low priority. I just like it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the best one.
Yeah. Quickly to the prayers. Nothing has changed except everything is now wholly within 14 inches. But the prayers are exactly identical. Catechism of Murder is still the best one.
Yep, every day of the week.
Blood of Sacrament will probably see far more use now, because you want to get that
or Sacrament of Blood.
Yeah, Sacrament of Blood, because you want to get that +1 turn for your command trait. And I'm guessing you will probably see more Covenant of Iron Heart as a way to be immune to battle shock tests, especially as a backup in case your Witch Brew fails.
Yeah. I quite honestly think less hags are going to be relevant. I mean,
yeah.
I see most lists from now on having probably the Slaughter Queen and some Iron Rack and I've just had a mind blank here, Medusa.
Yeah, definitely. Hags will see less play, but if you do bring them, that could be a good way to use them. But yeah, Catechism Murder is definitely the auto take, probably followed by Blessing of Khaine.
Yeah.
And then the other two, depending on what you need.
In fact, I kind of cried inside when I saw that Blessing of Khaine was unchanged.
Yeah. Take Covenant if you're running big blobs, because you might need it for battle shock purposes. And Sacrament of Blood can be useful situationally.
Although Crimson Rejuvenation, combined with the healing Command trait. I'm starting to see a thing here.
You really like that healing one.
It's not good,
Most
but I'm
Daughters of
starting to see
Khaine
a potential
players
synergy.
Most of the time, Daughters of Khaine players don't use it because it can't affect Marathi, who's the only one worth healing.
Yeah, in a competitive sense, I'm off my rocker. I'm like me and the healing thing. That's me pursuing an idea for like a funsies list at this point.
Yeah.
I want that endlessly regenerating cauldron, or actually a blood rack shrine.
Right, so the last thing to look at is the War Scroll battalions. There's not a lot to see here. Of note is that they removed the one that gives you some Stormcast with it, and they removed the old I forget what it was called, the one where you ran a whole bunch of snakes.
Yeah. Well, there is now one with a bunch of snakes, but it requires you to take Marathi.
Yeah, so they got that one instead, which is probably the best one there, in my opinion. It's the only one that has an ability that is actually worth it.
Yeah, the other ones I'm really not impressed with.
Shrine Brood is still the worst, in my opinion.
I'm looking at the Shrine Brood and I'm seeing this healing crap, and I'm like, I'm putting together a weird list in my brain. I want to try it on you.
Cauldron Guard can be useful if that's what you're running, but I don't because I don't have 2 units of Life Takers.
Not yet, I assume.
Sorry?
Not yet, I assume.
Slaughter Troop is still useful, but if you're running Zent, the new one, its ability is literally useless to you because you get that for your whole army. Shadow Patrol I don't like because the minimum units is just way too many.
Yeah, that's 4 units of Harpies.
And then 2 units of Warlocks.
And 2 units of Warlocks on top of that. The 2 units of Warlocks I don't mind, it's 4 units of Harpies.
Gathcoven, the units you can put in there is nice. Like, it's only a minimum of 4 units with lots of optional ones, but the ability itself is pretty bad considering it's for all snakes, and snakes you generally won't be running into battle shock problems.
If you've got battle shock problems, then you need to kill someone's wizards.
So, yeah, in conclusion, I think Viperic Guard is the only one worth taking, but you got to take Marathi.
Yeah, would you always take Marathi with the Viperic Guard though?
You have to.
No, I mean like in this battalion. If you built a list, would you always take Marathi inside? Like, would you always take Marathi and then the Viperic Guard battalion?
At the moment, yes. Yes, I would. If I was taking Marathi, I would bring Viperic Guard every time.
Because what? That's 600 points plus... what's the minimum points value on this battalion? That's what I'm trying to calculate.
So the Viperic Guard is 140 points. Then you got Marathi, which is 600. Then you got.
So what do you say it was 140?
Yeah.
And then
you got at least 1 Bloodback Medusa or Iron Scale, so that's 100 or 110.
Yep, and then
2 to 3 units of Blood Sisters or Blood Stalkers.
And how much are the Blood Sisters?
The Blood Sisters are 130 each.
That's 1,100 points right there in that battalion. Half your army.
Yeah, and the units that you're putting there are not crap. They're all ones that you would want to take anyway.
I think that's worth it because you just fill up the rest of it with either increasing those unit sizes or just throwing in the things you're missing and your witch elves.
So that's it. That's everything that's been revealed. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think that's kind of it. We're out of time at this point. We've gone actually way over time, so I apologize to anyone watching this at this point. If you've stuck around, thanks for having sat through this. I'm very excited to see this army in action. I'm very excited to maybe, sometime within this next millennia be able to play physically again.
We'll get there, DJ.
Yeah, so there is that. Overall, I think the book is solid. I think it's a good improvement, mostly just rebalancing and cleaning up. I'd probably rate it still at the same level of competitiveness it was before. It's still relatively high. What do you think, Tin?
Yeah, I think overall it seems pretty good. You know, there are a good number of nerfs and buffs all round. I think most of it has just been rejigging, so it can still basically do everything it did before. It's just now you have to work a bit harder for it, and there's a bit more luck involved. So if anything, I would say it's maybe slightly under what it was before, but I think in the hands of a skilled player, it will still be just as lethal as it was. It's no longer the auto run, auto win army it used to be.
Yeah, it was a pain to try and counter before. But anyway, we'll have to break down and have another tactical video with another beginner's guide to Daughters of Khaine. Yay, I look forward to doing the research, and unfortunately, before I do that, we'll have to actually play it and find out. So there is that. So I'm looking forward next to the Hedonites of Slaanesh. And we'll probably be back next time with a little bit on what's up with them. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I've been Jay, and this has been T from Jade Productions. Again, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me on.
No worries.